If you're a parent trying to help your son get recruited, there's a good chance you're making one of these mistakes, and it might be the reason coaches aren't responding. I've helped over 150 families get scholarships, and after seeing it over and over again, these are the exact mistakes that keep good players from getting real opportunities. Now, parents don't mess up recruiting because they don't care. It's because the process is confusing. There's a ton of bad advice out there, and no one teaches you how to actually works, and you don't usually learn it until it's all too late. But once you understand what not to do, everything starts to click. Now let's go through the biggest mistakes I see every single week and what to do instead to get your son a real shot. Now the first one is waiting for coaches to find their son. This is the number one mistake because recruiting isn't about being found, it's about being marketed the right way. No coach can recruit your son, no coach can give him scholarships if they don't know about him. And ultimately there's a million high school football players out there and only about 10,000 college coaches. So if you do the math, that is a lot of players for only so many coaches. So if your son is not one of the players that coaches know about, then how is he supposed to get recruited? So really, recruiting becomes this marketing game where your goal is to get him in front of as many coaches as possible in the correct way that makes them want to recruit him. It's about branding your son in a way that makes coaches want your son on their team right away. Because a lot of families wait around. They think that, hey, just doing well in the field is going to get him out there enough. But that's just not true. Coaches aren't looking at local media to see what they're saying about certain kids in the area. They're using tools like Twitter. They're listening to direct outreach via email or DMs. They're not reading your local newspaper to see who performed the best in terms of stats that day. So make sure you're in charge of your own destiny, you're branding yourself correctly, and you're playing the marketing game of the recruiting process to make sure that you're guaranteeing your success instead of relying on luck of someone finding you. The second is relying too much on the high school coach. Now, your son's coach might mean well, but he's managing 50 plus players. It's your job as a parent to take control of your son's exposure. Again, there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake. And not just the money at stake, but your son's future. And you're placing that in the hands of someone that is also in charge of, probably 40 to 50 plus other kids, and really is just worried about winning games at their high school. They've got their own family, they've got their own job that they're handling. And that job criteria in terms of helping kids get recruited is often not the number one priority. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't let your high school coach help you. That's probably fine to have them help you out with the process. But I see too many families go, oh, you know what? The high school coach is just gonna take care of it. He told us that he's gotten kids recruited. In reality, they get to the end of the process and they realize that the high school coach hasn't been doing as much as they thought he was gonna do. They've gotten no direction from him. And he's not even helping them with just potentially connecting them with any coaches. Absolutely, use your high school coach as a tool, but do not rely on your high school coach when there's so much at stake, and especially when time is of the essence. Instead, put it in your own hands, start taking control of your own process, get ahead. That way, hey, if your high school coach happens to be a great tool, use it. But if it happens to backfire, you already have momentum, you already know what to do next, and you're not in this big panic stage where I find a lot of families are. Third is focusing only on Division I schools. Now, D1 schools look great on paper, but there are incredible opportunities and real money at D2, D3, and NA programs. Now, D3 schools do not offer athletic scholarships, but they can offer academic and needs-based scholarships as well. So there still is money there. And to be honest, even though they can't offer athletic scholarships, there is wiggle room there. And especially if you're a guy that they want, they can find ways to give you more money. So it's always important to communicate that with those programs, especially if there's a D3 school that you really like and they've been in touch with you a lot and you're really considering it. I would highly suggest that you try to have more in-depth conversations about the financials, because there may be a way that they can give you more money than they're saying, at least at the moment. But especially at D2 and NA schools, there are real money there. For example, I went to NA school and was able to earn a $70,000 scholarship for the last 2 years of my schooling. And so that is significant sums. But all that to say is I had no problem with the dream being D1. My goal out of high school, out of junior college, was of course go D1. And I was able to earn a Division I offer. But to me, it really just didn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of my fit. It was to a very high academic school, but they don't offer actual scholarship offers. So I decided not to go there. And to be honest, I don't know if I would have liked going to Division I. I mean, I think that there's a perfect blend in terms of you get good focus on academics, a good solid athletic experience, and also get to have a little bit more time to yourself in your own personal life as well at these D2, D3, and NA schools. So I think it's always important to consider all options, because at the end of the day, the best option is the one with the most options. And so instead of just being D1 or bust, I would recommend looking at all options, and if D1 happens to be the best option, awesome, go for it. That's more power to you. But I think ruling out some of these lower levels, especially really early on when you really have no idea who's going to be interested in you, really just handcuffs you in the process, when you could be building momentum across all schools, all programs, and have a ton of great options. And then it really just becomes, okay, which of the best options do I want to choose? Instead, I see a lot of families get locked in on Division Ones. These Division Ones don't like them back, and then they're just stuck in this process of trying to find schools way too late when they could have had many more options and had a much less stressful process. Number 4 is poor communication or lack of follow-up. Now, coaches remember the kids who stay in touch. One message is not enough to build a relationship. This is often the biggest thing that separates one recruit from other recruits, is just the communication itself. I mean, think about it. Think about when you're interacting with a 16, 17-year-old high school kid. If a kid is able to communicate themselves more effectively or is persistent when they're messaging you, that is going to stand out much more than the kid that just reaches out one time or doesn't ask any questions or is just using one-word answers. It shows confidence. It shows that they're prepared for these conversations, that they're serious about this whole recruiting process, and probably football as well. And you may say, oh, that's a huge generalization and that coaches are lazy in thinking that way. But that's just how it is. These coaches, as we've already talked about, don't have enough time. They don't have the ability to fully evaluate everyone. They're not going to have every kid, take these super intensive interviews. Every single opportunity you get is extremely important. You have to make the most of it. And so communication and following up is a great example of those small little details that a lot of people miss out on, that they think are not a big deal or, not even worth the small amount of time that it takes, when in reality it can yield so much better results in your recruiting process by having good communication, having good conversations, and following up with these coaches consistently. The last one is just not understanding the timeline. Most parents wait until junior or even senior year to start. And by then, most recruiting classes are already filling up. We're currently at the class of 2026 as the senior class right now. And so, for example, at this time of recording, it's October 17th. Most FBS programs have their boards full and are pretty much ready to rock and roll. They're just finishing up some of their signing classes. And they will be kind of doing that over the next couple of months. FCS schools, I would say, are about 50-50. Some are pretty much wrapped up, know who they want. They may not have everybody signed, but they know who they're going to offer next if somebody happens to bail. And some schools are still looking for some guys here and there, but mostly probably 70 to 80% done. That is a good example of why you shouldn't start senior year. By the time you get to senior year, most D1s are wrapping up. They know who they want. If you're not on their board, it's gonna be very hard to get on there. You're still in the running on D2s, D3s, and NAs, but even then, they've already offered their top guys, and even their mid-tier guys. You're trying to build relationships with coaches that have relationships with guys that have been built over months, if not over a year at this point. And so again, you're playing catch up with that. It's much better to start earlier in the process rather than later. Now, usually that sweet spot somewhere between freshman year to sophomore year. When you get earlier than freshman year, 8th grade, 7th grade, early on, it's just way too early in terms of coaches just aren't really going to spend much time on you. Education can be what you spend time on during that time in terms of watching these videos. Also using X and going to camps can be good stuff as well, but it's not necessarily the recruiting process that I would be focusing on that much. Just developing, having fun is all important stuff during that time. But freshman, sophomore years is generally when it makes more sense to go more gun-ho. Now, I worked with a family who started quite late. It was actually around this time of last year of 2024. No offers, no responses, had barely done anything, barely had a Twitter account. And we applied our exposure system, and within just a couple weeks, their son had multiple coaches reaching out. I believe it was well over 10, as well as 4 different scholarship offers. So timing does matter, but there's always ways that you can speed it up. I would definitely recommend in that family's case, if they would have started a year ago, it would have been way smoother, way easier of a process, but it still worked out. And so if any of these sound familiar, you're not alone. Most parents make these mistakes because no one has ever showed them what actually works or how to correctly think about this whole recruiting process. That's why we built our recruiting system. We help families avoid these pitfalls and create the exposure needed to get real scholarship offers. So if you want me and my team to personally help your son get seen by college coaches, click the link below to book a free call. But if you're still learning and want to hear directly from college coaches about what matters in recruiting, watch my next video. I talked to over 100 coaches. Here's the biggest mistake in recruiting.